evening and welcome to NeuroDigest with me, your host, Sylvia Mochabo, and my sign interpreter, Maureen. And we will touch up on a bit on what we touched on last week, where we discussed autism and the signs and symptoms. We touched on the behaviors of an autistic person. We touched a bit on the medical concerns like sleep, insomnia, jaundice, and the seizures that children could be having at an early age, and their lactose intolerance. We also looked at the developmental disorders that we might experience as persons with autism. These are the milestones that we expect when a child is 9 months, 18 months, 12 months, and 24 months. And we noted that we need to pay a close attention when we notice that our children are not reaching the milestones as is expected in terms of their sensory responses, social behaviors, their verbal milestones, and behaviors in general when they're in social settings. Those expectations are some of the key things that we look at to give us a hint that a child could be autistic. Today we will be diving a bit deeper on trying to see how do we go actually look at autism conclusively. We've said it is a spectrum, meaning that there are very many things that could be showing signs of someone being autistic, and that not one person is equal to the other in terms of the signs and symptoms that they display. And let's just touch a bit on some facts files on autism. Did you know that 1 in every 59 persons has autism? And apart from that, when it comes to the ages, that in Europe, we have early diagnosis as early as 18 months, while in other minority backgrounds, that is Africa, Asia, and the likes, we have diagnoses as late as 4 to 6 plus years. This is something that needs to be looked at, and that's what we're doing this awareness, so that parents are able to identify and take their children out to be checked in good time, because early diagnosis is what will help a child get help in good time, meaning that they'll be able to deal with the signs and symptoms and be able to live a better life, depending on which area of the spectrum that requires most attention. Then, apart from that, did you know that boys are 4 times more likely to get autism than girls? If you did not know, now you know. Now let us touch a bit on causes of autism. This has been quite a great debate all over the world that is still ongoing, because there is no certain cause of autism. Very many people have said different things about why people become autistic. And if I listen to all the different mothers and their stories, there are similarities, and everyone has their aspect of why they think that their children became autistic. Because screening of autism and diagnosis of autism, it being a spectrum, is very difficult, because it's not like malaria where you go, take your blood sample, and it's either positive or negative. And also autism also takes time, because you can have your checks because of the delayed symptoms at around 2 years, you can be able to check. Then around 4 to 6 years also you get the affirmation, and then we have the Asperger's, which comes around 7 to 9, which is also a part of the 3 levels of autism. So with that in mind, we have people discussing about vaccines, that vaccines could be cause of autism. Different scientists have tried to prove it differently, that the people who have autism, if you look at the content of their stomach, there is a certain aspect of a chemical that is found in vaccines that is found there, while others do not believe that vaccines contribute. We have the genetics, the history of a family, where you find if one child has autism, tendencies of another child that you give birth to having autism is high. So that means you need to pay very close attention once you have one child who is autistic. And the other thing we have is environmental characteristics. We know that we are having a lot of climatical changes, and if we look at the statistics of autism, it has risen very fast, and for it to be right now at 1 to 58 currently, as of the latest statistics that we have under CDC. When we look at most parents who I have personally engaged with, you will find that a lot of the parents whose children are autistic have similarities of children being born before term. This means they were premature. That is one of the aspects that we have also noted that is very high. And the characteristics of also what surrounds the reasons of why the child came early, like delayed labor, drained amniotic fluid, such things that hinder the most conducive environment of a child when a woman is pregnant, are some of the things the stories that we've had on the ground. In Africa, we're currently having the age of 4 being how early we are able to diagnose autism, which is a bit late, considering that the child's brain stops developing most of the time around 9 to 10 years. So that means you have a shorter period to actually work towards the brain development of your child through the various means of supplement and actually training of the brain so that the child gets to take in a lot of the information. And don't forget, engage us, ask your questions on our Twitter handle, Mora, Sylvia, or Andy Speaks 4, or Science TV. And you can also interact with us on Instagram and also on Facebook. For any of the questions that you could be having, engage with us, and then we'll be able to answer the questions that you could be having. Even from the previous episodes that we've had, if there's anything that you'd like for us to touch back on, ask, and we are here for you to help you with that. When we look at the diagnosis of autism, we shall invite an assessor sometime soon to come and get deeper into that, because there are different ways of different standards according to the various parts of and various scientists and doctors who use different ways of diagnosis. Some that have been a source of argument, others that parents have at least tried to adopt. But today we're going to discuss it in a different angle. So don't go far. We'll go on a short break, and then we'll be right back as we dive into the various ways of how we look and how to get to verify that a child is actually autistic, apart from the various signs and symptoms that we have discussed. Stay tuned, and let's see you shortly. Welcome back to NeuroDigest with me, Sylvia Mochabo, and my interpreter, Maureen. And we are back discussing about diagnosis of autism. Remember, we had mentioned about the behavior characteristics, developmental and medical concerns that as 3 of the aspects when you're looking at the autism spectrum disorder to be able to get a definite diagnosis or if a child is autistic. Now, we will get deeper into this. What exactly is looked at when a child is being diagnosed? Normally, the diagnosis is usually done by an assessor, and after an assessor, you can also go talk to a psychologist, a pediatric neurologist, to be very specific, because there are tests that they have to do. But let us go into this step by step. We usually encourage early diagnosis for the fact that the earlier you detect autism, the better it is for a child to have an easier life and to be able to adapt to all the changes that come along with it. So the diagnosis process, when one goes to the doctor, you spend a couple of days and actually hours in a day as you try to understand the child. We put them in different environments and see how it is that they interact with the various items and people, and also object reactions and physical. So let's see, some of the questions that you get to be asked will be mostly about the birth history. So the doctors are usually very keen on exactly how your pregnancy went, from the minute you discovered you're pregnant to all the 3 trimesters, and if there was any difficulties, so that they're able to identify if anything was amiss. Apart from that, there is also the past medical history. They like to know you as a parent, your husband. Do you have any history of any chronic illnesses like asthma, bronchitis, diabetes? These are some of the questions that the doctors will always ask you. Then we have the comprehensive review, where they will ask all the general questions about your lifestyle and if there was any trauma the time you were carrying your pregnancy and stuff like that, to look at the general aspects of the child's growth. And then we have the social history. This is where they will try and find out, how is your child interacting with other children? How do they interact at home? Who are they attached to? What toys do they like? what exactly do they like doing during their free time? And when you take them out to spend time with other people, how do they react? Do they interact with everyone else, or do they go and get isolated? How do they respond to the expectations of emotions? Like when you go tickling a child, do they tickle back? The eye contact, like we had earlier mentioned, and also the goo gagas that usually children show, in respect to when they're happy, when they're sad, because some autistic children actually do not respond to emotional situations. Like you expect them to laugh at something, they just laugh, they'll just stare at you. And then we have multi-generational family history. This is where the doctor wants to find out, in your family, was there any other person who was autistic or displayed any other type of disorders, for lack of a better word, in your family, either the father's side, the mother's side, and they will actually send you back to find out from your parents, is there anyone who was autistic? And you go down, is there anyone who had issues like convulsive epilepsy or convulsive disorders and stuff like that? Because these are some of the ways that, remember we had mentioned that autistic has shown tendencies of being a genetic disorder. So when they seek to find your family history and they find that there was someone down the line in your generations, your fathers, your forefathers, who had suffered from any of this, then it would explain why your child is autistic. Then we have the developmental milestones. You see, this keeps coming up. We said, parents, you better be very keen when your child is growing up. You have to be sure and have your checklist. At 9 months, what is expected of your child, at 18 months, 24 months, up until 30 months, and you keep checking. So are they walking at the time they're supposed to? Are they talking in the same speed they're supposed to be talking? How many words are they saying according to the expectation with their age groups? And how are they in relation to others? And what is expected of a child by certain ages? Then we have the education history. Have you been able to take your child to school? Remember, our children also learn at home. So things like naming the items in the house by a certain age, do they understand? How do they communicate when they want something? Do they say it or do they point at it? Because you find most autistic kids who are nonverbal will always pull you and take you to what it is that they want, rather than say, give me this or that, because they do not have the cognitive of actually saying the words. So, and you'll find that the kids are able to rota count. This means repeating the 1, 2, 3 up until like 10. So when they can say that after you give them the cue to start, like you say 1, will the child take it up and continue saying it? And actually just identifying photos also, like if you remove a photo book, are they able to read the actions? Are they able to tell you this is a cow or a cat, or this is a farm, this is a car? Such things, those are the educational history that we look at. And you also find when it is late, you find that a child who's gone to school and they're not able to catch up with the rest of the class. Those are some of the things that you have to look at. So it's not that the child is stupid, as most people would like to say, or say that they are slow learners, but you need to pay keen attention, because remember, we have learning disabilities that are also associated with autism. So you'd rather find out, is he dyslexic, or is it that they're slow, is it that they are not keen with certain subjects? So these are some of the things that we really need to pay attention to as parents and look at. Then we come to the other part, which is the physical exam. So we have the neurologic exam, whereby we have the doctor checking on the sensory neuron. This is where, like, if you tickle a child, will they respond? How is the threshold for pain? Will they feel the pain immediately? Remember, we talked about autism being a neurodevelopmental disorder, meaning it is the nervous system, the communication between the head to the spine to the nervous system. So how does the child react? Are they too sensitive to some of the sensories, or are they just right as how it is expected? Then we have the motor response. Motor response means movement. That is the fine motor skill. Normally you will have a regular child at a certain age knowing how to reach out to something. They can hold a pen finely. They're able to scribble. And you find with the children who have ASD that they will have difficulty maintaining that pattern of either holding a pen or coloring within boundaries, or doing things that require a lot of attention, because their fine motor skills, that is the movement of either the hands or their feet, is not very fine. And you find that also walking, that they might be delayed in walking, or they will stagger a bit. The other thing about children with autism, that especially the high dependent, I don't want to say low functioning, but the high dependent persons on the spectrum, you find that they have a lot of physical issues. So you find that when it comes to movements, I'll give an example of my child. He has a flat foot, meaning that the arc that's usually below the foot is not there. He's quite flat. Meanwhile, he's walking, you have the foot going inwards, and they look like they have knocked knees, sort of. Because of that flatness, then the knees get to knock each other. And that means their balance, or when they're walking, is very low. And that means they're going to be very prone to falling and accidents that involve a lot of very fast movement. And we advise that children get insoles so that the arc can grow in time, and you keep changing it according to, and you start early so that the body can reform in time. Then we have reflexes of the eyes. This is where you find either child will have knocked eyes, or they will have blurry vision. And so the doctor, what they will do, they'll look at their response when they put light in their eyes, and also ask some of the questions. But we have, apart from that, then we have like hearing. This is usually within the first 2 years of a child's life. And we find most of the time the children who are autistic being misdiagnosed that they are actually deaf, while in turn, if they actually can hear you, it's just that they're not talking. That means they're non-verbal or slow to speech. So it will take time, and you have to be very keen and pay attention to all these small symptoms that we have lying around. Then we have dysmorphology, which is the exam where they check for birth defects. This is done by the doctor when you take the child for checkups. Did you ever notice when the doctor takes a tape measure and measures the head circumference of a child? That is where that they're checking for these deformations, because a child's circumference is expected to be a certain size according to their age. So when the child's head is either bigger in circumference as when what it is supposed to be, that's one of the signs that the doctors look out for. You will also find that they check the length of the child according to their age, and also the circumference either of the abdomen also. And then they also check for other birth anomalies and malformations, like cleft lip. We have cleft lip. We have the eyes, if they're focal or they're cross-eyed. And then their legs, like we just mentioned earlier, are they okay? You find that we have children whose legs will be tilted in form in such that it is at an angle and not flat. Others, you find that it has actually bent or changed direction. These are some of the things that the doctors also look for when they're doing the diagnosis. Apart from that, we have the social behavior. These are more of the questions and very many things that the doctors check when they're trying to do the diagnosis of a child. Then we have the social behavior. The child is put in an environment where at their age they're expected to interact and react to certain things, like example, play. If you leave the child alone, what will they choose? Then they're put for items, different items, so that we see how they interact with the items. Will they interact like we had said some time back? If it's a boy and you put all these toys, do they incline towards the cars? If it's a girl, will they go towards the baby dolls and stuff like that? Because that is the social norm. That is what is like biologically expected of children. And you will find with autistic children, they don't have that alignment per se. And they get attracted to the more queer items that are there. So you will find them ignoring what it is that you expect them to do and go for things that they are more attached to. Then we saw also the attachment of odd objects. You find that when they're in specific areas, they would like to have a specific item with them all the time. These are some of the other behaviors that now you as a parent, when you go for this analysis, you were supposed to be informing the doctors during the Q&A session about their social behaviors, apart from the amount of time that they shall be exposed to these items and the social setting, so that we are able to see how do they interact. And remember, I mentioned we're going to invite one of the professionals to come and guide us and tell us more about this diagnosis and the entire steps in detail from a professional. And I hope we have touched a bit on that. And now you know what you expect when you go for diagnosis, at least the tidbit of it, and you will need to book in advance, and you need to take your time. Remember, we have the Special Needs Info Hub website where we're going to be listing where you can get such services of the doctors, the neurologists, and the schools. And basically, as a special needs parent, it will be your home to go for your info of everything that you need around your child as they grow. Now, the things that will affect your surrounding when a child is autistic involves their routine. How do they spend their day? Do they change things, or are they very rigid in how they do things and when they do it and in a specific way? And even how do they transition from one activity to the other? Is it easy, or do they cause a tantrum when you try and change something? Then their communication, that's the other environment that you look at. You have to look at the family in the home, the relatives, the immediate family, who are they inclined to? How do they relate with everyone within the nuclear and the extended family? Then you have to look also at the interaction in the social scene, the school community at large, for the children who will have been put either in playgroup or in preschool. Apart from that, then there is the social change. When you remove your child from their normal environment and you put them in a different environment, let's say you go to church at a specific place and then you change, how do they behave towards such changes in their life? These are some of the things that we also as a parent can take note of, and to help in trying to identify if your child is autistic or not, because all this, remember we said, it's a spectrum. So all these small items are the ones that when put together and consolidated, you're able to gauge if your child is on the spectrum or not. And this is normally done between the years, the two years up until 6 and above. But the earlier, the better. We'll take a small break, and when we come back, we shall look at a bit of the steps and what to expect as a parent, because your life will change. It is not easy when you get your diagnosis. So what do you do? Who do you run to? What do you expect from the community? How do you handle it as a parent, as a family? Who do you tell what? Because trust me, it is a life-changing moment for you. We'll try and just help you walk through it. And so don't go away, and we'll be right back with me, Sylvia Mochabo, and my interpreter, Maureen Maeda. So stay tuned and stay with us. Welcome back to NeuroDigest with me, Sylvia Mochabo, and my interpreter, Maureen. Now we're going to go through some of the emotions and some of the challenges that a parent goes through once they find out that their children or child is autistic. It's usually one of the hardest things as a parent, because remember, we all expect a bundle of joy. We all have expectations of a perfect child. Don't fret, remember, every child is special just the way they are. So we need you to embrace your child with all their difference. Just embrace and love them. The first thing that normally goes through your mind is 20,000 questions of why. You start feeling guilty. Then you end up sometimes getting depressed. I will not lie, I've been through that road. And depression is not the best thing when you have a child who needs you the most at that time. So we ask the friends, family, and immediately your partner, that could be your husband or whoever who is closest to you. I'm saying this because you'll find that we have situations where a person is a single parent. So you need to have someone close to walk this journey with and walk with you. And for husbands, let's try and embrace. Remember, I know we're Africans, and all the time we will say it is your fault as the woman, while it's not. I hope now we were educated enough to know it's just a neurological disorder. And these issues about it is a curse, or you did this or that, we've had very, very funny stories about why someone gets a child with autism. Someone once upon a time actually asked their friend if they've been checked for syphilis, which has nothing to do with autism. Someone else was asked if they were unfaithful when they were breastfeeding the other child. And these are ridiculous questions that we get to hear from friends and family. And we'd like for you as a community to embrace and give a parent a break at this time. Remember, they're going through a very tough time. So your support is what they need the most. And you as the mother, don't guilt trip yourself. It is not your fault. Remember, God never gives you what you cannot handle. And you will be shocked at how much you will learn in the journey of raising a special needs child. The second thing you should do is educate yourself about autism. Get to learn all these aspects about autism, like we're trying to do for you right now, to educate you and to make you understand what are the causes, what to look out for, how to handle various issues. And as we progress in this season, you will get to be fully equipped and to be able to understand the entire spectrum at the best we can try. We're just here to work with you. Remember, we have a lot of also online communities, and this is one area that also, as much as I'd encourage, remember, when you're in that platform, just be you, listen out. Don't start guilt tripping yourself because so-and-so's child has done this and yours has not. Do not compare your child to anyone else's child. Remember, we've said this is a spectrum, so no child is equal to the other. Everyone reaches their milestone at their own time. We will celebrate even the smallest milestone as the day they say hi, or they say they do 2-sentence words, or the day they just go for potty on their own. Remember, we have children who are autistic take a very long time to be potty trained, and also that can be very depressing for parents. And apart from that, read about all the services that you require. This is like the speech therapy. Read about IBA, read about ABA, read about occupational therapy and physiotherapy and what it will do for your child. Sorry, I'm using a lot of jargon, but if we go into the details, it's going to be another session altogether. But we will dive into those therapies at a later episode. Apart from that, just get to know what works, what has worked for someone else, and try, and also educate yourself on how to have a routine. For example, your child, autistic children thrive when they have routine. I wake up, I do this, and maintain that consistency. That makes it easier for them to have a day that is not so clogged up. Remember, autistic persons don't like disorder and they don't like sudden change. So the best thing is to have consistency in your house, and if you actually put them into a routine, it's going to be an easier time for both of you and to give you less meltdowns. Remember, we said for autistic children, it is not tantrums. They're called meltdowns because they're trying to adjust to certain changes that they don't know how to process. So embrace that. And as a parent, stay positive. Don't look at what they cannot do. Focus on what they have managed to do and thrive to build that. Because the more negative you are, the more you're not going to be able to identify the small milestones that our children actually make. So even when you go to those chat rooms, celebrate every small milestone that your child actually gets to do. And then we need to have safety measures around the house. Remember, we have different degrees of characters and behaviors in our children. We have children who cannot stand light, who cannot stand very loud voices and sounds. We have the children who cannot stand certain textures. So take time and understand what your child can and cannot stand, and make sure the environment in the house is actually put safely to adjust to what your child likes. Then we have children who have self-injury behaviors. These are the ones like the child who gets to bang their heads in or trying to adjust themselves and to just deal with the sensory overload that they have. So it will be wise for such children, you have a head helmet. Ensure your walls are padded. Also have locks. Remember, we have characteristics like wandering, whereby you have a child just walks away and they disappear. We've had so many cases where children get lost, and remember they're non-verbal most of the time, hence they cannot tell you who they are or where they come from. So as parents, ensure your locks are well done and that you have gates in the necessary places. Keep them off the kitchen until they're old enough and they understand the dangers. But remember, we also mentioned that autistic children sometimes have a high sense of pain, and apart from that, that their sense of fear could be lacking. lacking in that they would not know that if it's a car, I'm supposed to step away from it. You'll find the child going towards the car instead. So these are some of the things that we have to make sure that we try and tell them, try and illustrate to them that they need to keep up. So you have to work on your child. Then you have to also, all the things that we read, check your sources. Check your sources. Remember, Google is your friend, but it's not everything that you read is true. So you need to do your research and be patient with your child. Take time to get to know them. Take your time to also help them attain milestones like potty training, the walking, as slow as their speech will be coming. Walk this journey with them. Only then will you be able to appreciate every small milestone that they achieve. Then the other thing that we most likely like doing as Africans is locking our children up. My fellow parent, please, this is not the way to go. We know that in our rural areas, the parents do not understand, and we end up locking our children because of the stigma that we go through, because of how people make fun of our children. And in other areas, for some of the parents who raise their children single-handedly, you have the battle of, I cannot afford daycare, I don't have anyone to leave my child with, so I'd rather lock them up and go and try and fend for them. But just go out, let people understand. That's the only way people will be able to understand what you're going through. That's the only way people will be able to embrace your child, because they will have seen the child, they will have understood how they behave. There will actually be that extra help that you need. Because if I find your child outside and I understand that they are autistic and maybe they're non-verbal or they have self-injury behavior or they're wanderers, I'll be able to take your child back in. But if I am not informed or I've never seen the child, I would not know what to do as a good neighbor. So we encourage you to make sure you go outside. I'll give you a story. There's a lady who went to church with the baby, and the child decided today is the day we're removing our clothes. So you can imagine your child running, mumbling things from the end of the church all the way to the pulpit and starts jumping up and down, while the younger brother runs behind him saying, "No, we don't run naked in public." So you can imagine yourself in such a scenario. It can be quite embarrassing. And as special needs parents, we grow such a thick skin that such things happen, and we just walk straight up, take them, clothe them, and go sit back like nothing happens, while deep down inside, oh God, we're dying. We're actually practically dying. So you'll just rock up the next day like nothing happens, and that's how you soldier on in all these embarrassing situations. I will always have times when you get overloaded, because raising a special child is a lot of work. Those moments will come. And don't be afraid to ask for help. Don't be afraid to ask for help. Make sure you have that inner circle of people who will always be at a phone call away. That if you just say a certain code, they will understand what is going on and come to your side. It is not easy, but remember we said you have to educate those who are close to you, your family and your friends, so that way they will also be able to understand your child. They'll be able to embrace the child and be able to deal with the different situations that may arise depending on the various behavioral characters that we have in the autistic spectrum. So do not just sit and wallow in sadness and get depressed over nothing. Just talk to somebody. If you need one day off, tell someone, I need you to sit in for 1 hour. And it's not just go to, take yourself out for a day at the spa, or go sit with other women and have an adult day and laugh and just be just you. Like if you're Sylvia, I'll be like, it's a Sylvia day. I do that a lot. I've set my week in a way that I've programmed it. I have work, I have my children in the day, I have split my time. There is the days that Sunday, I know it's the day with my kids, so I brace myself the day before. Saturday and Fridays, end of day is me time. So I take time to be an adult. I take time to be myself with my friends, so that when Sunday comes, I am so geared up that I have missed my kids and I want to spend time with them. Not that it's ultimately that you cannot spend time with them even on Saturdays, but at least once a month, I have to make sure that I have that time fully to myself. That's the only way you can keep sane, because it can be a handful. When it comes to medical issues, we have a challenge in our country with that. But try and get a medical insurance, and you explain to them. This will come in handy, especially when you have very severe emergencies. It might not last for a long time, especially for parents whose autistic children have medical conditions. We know it can last us only like 3 months. but at least have something for emergencies. Have a medical cover that will cater for those dire moments when your child gets hospitalized. We don't pray that they do, but you better always be prepared and have that person who also can advise you on what to do. Also, when you're buying items for your house, make sure you have a corner for your child where they can have their own time, where they can have items that are used for sensory. Read about it. Do yourself a favor by reading online on how to do DIY, like do it yourself, to make things and toys that are educative for your child. And apart from that, you can actually have a sensory room for your child where the child can be able to have their calming sessions when they are going through a meltdown or something like that. So remember, do not compare your child to another person's child. Your child is unique. They're different. Remember what we said last time, developmental delays are just commas and not full stops. Your child will still get there. And as we wind up, please, dear parents, take your time and educate yourself. That's the best gift you can do to your child. Because what you understand, you'll be able to embrace. And like we always say in the autistic world, embrace, love, and care. And if there's anything you can do, just be kind. That's the best you can do for an autistic person, and try and understand what it is that they're going through. Thank you for being such a lovely audience. With me, Sylvia Mochabo here on NeuroDigest, and my interpreter, Maureen Maida. We see you next week as we look at the medical conditions that are underlying with autism spectrum disorder, so that we get to understand and know how to deal with some of these things. See you next week. Thank you.